back. We're going to talk about this later, and then and you know the other person may get upset about that, but if they try and call you back, if they try and text, don't respond. Put them on mute, whatever, for that hour. Take the time, and don't be tempted to go back the other way. And likewise, if your partner or the person you're co-parenting with or whatever does that to you, try your best not to react on to no, I need to finish this now. You just try and accept that. You know, also when you've got those thoughts going on in your head, this is when you're on your own. Writing those fucking thoughts down is the thing to do. You know, it doesn't have to be coherent. It can be on the back of a fucking envelope, whatever. You just pen and just scribble until nothing more is coming out. You know, whatever mad thing is going in there. You know, I hate her, can't do this. How dare they? What like this? I'm hungry. What, you know, any single thing that comes into your mind, get it down on paper, because then it's not in your head. And eventually you'll stop writing because there's nothing else there, and then you'll realize, okay, fine, I feel better now. You know, I mean, in cognitive behavioural therapy, that's what they do a lot of the time. They have you write it down and then actually analyse each thing for, you know, what is the distortion here and all that. What you know, am I maximising things? Am I using black and white thinking, which is like, you know, thinking only be that way or the other way. There's nothing in between, and that is another level to it. But just in a simple form, just literally writing means it's not in your head and it's fine. Like I say, it doesn't have to be legible. Tear it up and put it in the bin afterwards if you don't want to read. Just get it out of your head, because those things going around your head will just make things worse.
Hold that for Owen. So, have you been going through therapy that you yourself? And if
yes,
so,
absolutely. Plenty all over the
things work for you?
So for me, cognitive behavioural therapy was the one that worked the best. But funnily enough, it was actually self-help that really was a breakthrough for me on that one. Although I was seeing a therapist, she recommended oh my God, I've just lost the video. Oh, no, we're there. She recommended a book to me called 10 Days to Great Self-Esteem. And that was just for some reason that book just spoke to me, because it's mostly an exercise. It's an exercise book, but it teaches you cognitive behavioural therapy while you're doing it, and that just clicked for me. Now I've recommended that book to some other people, and some people it's been good for, and some people are just like, I fucking hate this, I can't do it, you know, and that's fine. You know, it's absolutely fine, because for every different person it works differently as well. Compassion therapy is something that helped me a bit. Not during the breakup, thing. During the actual breakup, I was doing ADHD coaching, which, learning about how to channel my neurodiversity and all that kind of stuff. And as part of that, there was a couples therapist who helped us go through the breakup and so on, from the perspective of knowing that I had ADHD, and my wife is somewhere neurodiverse. We don't know exactly where, she hasn't been tested, but you know, possibly on that, possibly on the other spectrum, who knows. The kids definitely are. I'm absolutely certain. We're in the process of getting that analysed now. But you know, it takes a good couple of years.
What are the signs of someone who has ADHD? I mean, what is that about?
Yeah. So it's a lot of us aren't aware of it because we weren't diagnosed when we were kids, and by the time you're an adult, the whole because you think of ADHD as like talking to squirrel, there's that there, and you know, you're unable to concentrate and so on. But by the time you're an adult, if you haven't had diagnosed, if you haven't seen it, you've developed coping techniques. Right. So you don't act like that. Right. But you're experiencing other things because these coping techniques are sort of pushing the real you down, so to speak. Okay. You know, so what I would suggest, there is an online magazine called Attitude. So that's attitude, but with two D's instead of the T at the beginning, ADD, Attitude. And there are tests on there, free tests that anyone can do. There's tests for men, tests for women, because it's a very different test for women because we're only just starting to understand it in women, because like most things medically, you know, things have been much more researched for men than they have for women because of all the male-dominated stuff and all that, and you know, and because it manifests differently in different genders anyway, you know, simple as that. But I'd absolutely tell anyone, you know, it's a 2 minutes out of your life, do it. You know, and if it says no, great. But if you score high, I think, okay, maybe that's something I should have a look into. In the UK, it's a disability. It counts as a disability. So you know, you are as soon as you're actually diagnosed, you are entitled to your work have to take care of you on it. You know,
what are the common symptoms across the board of ADHD?
Yeah. So, It's not. People think of it as lack of attention. What it comes down to is an inability to create dopamine the way neurotypical people do.
Okay.
And dopamine, you'll know, is the chemical that gives you the response for, oh, I've done that thing, and now I feel good that I've done it. I'm going to do some more things. You know? And as a result of the inability to regulate that, we either have trouble focusing. We have trouble focusing on things that don't give us the kind of dopamine we're looking for. Yeah. But then we can get into one thing and we will hyperfixate and get absolutely into that. And there's a lot of very successful people have used this. I mean, Will Smith's an example I give a lot, who is a brilliant example for hyperfixation and weaponizing that hyperfixation. There's a famous video which you may have seen with him being interviewed, where he says, I've got this incredible work ethic. Between me and the other guy is, if we're going for a part, either he's getting off the treadmill first or I'm going to die. That's hyperfocus. That's it. And he is very open. I mean, he's not very open, but he is open about the fact he has ADHD. That's one of his things. Richard Branson's another one. One of the most successful businessmen in the world. Whereas his thing I use as an example for what we call split focus, which is the opposite of it, which is where we are not. It's not a case of, I can't focus on that, I can't focus on that. It's a case of, I'm actually focusing on 7 different things at once. Because you think of Virgin, think of that business. It makes no sense. No sense. Trains, radio, money, aeroplanes, none of them are remotely connected. But he makes it work because that's his kind of freaking brain. It's extraordinary. Only a person, freaking spaceships. It's crazy. But that's and so that's the thing. But where we if you find yourself, if you're the kind of person who will get interested in something, and then when you get interested in a thing, you will just go nuts and learn everything there is to do about that thing, get really into it, and then after a couple of years the interest just sort of fades and you're just not kind of feeling it anymore, but you kind of keep doing it because you're trying to get that feeling back. It doesn't happen. It was like that with me with magic and a few other things. That's a very big sign of ADHD in an adult, that one.
Owen, is there anything wrong with having ADHD? Because
not at all.
Yeah, because
not at all. Like I say, used right, it's a superpower.
Talk to me about that.
It really is. And 80% of it is superpower. 20% of it is weakness. Unfortunately, we live in a world full of weaknesses. The world is built for neurotypical people. So if you have got neurodiversity, you have to learn how to make it work with that and learn how to get the advantages and just accept the weak side of it. But yeah, like I say, massive successful people have it and have learned how to use it. Like I say, no one calls him Kryptonite Man. Is the way I like to think of it. Superman has a big weakness that will destroy him, and anyone with a neurodiversity, like a lot of autistic people, have real trouble reading social cues. That is an absolute weakness for them, but they can create computations that neurotypical people can only dream of in seconds. ADHD people will have trouble focusing on certain things that are just mundane and repetitive. But give us a problem to solve, and we'll have it done. I often when I'm at work, I will have my work for the day done in 2 hours, and then I've nothing to do for the rest of the day half the time. Whereas my neurotypical colleagues are just the whole way through, because I've done it because my brain's worked that much quicker. Like I say, that's the superpower part of it. Of course, then a lot of that is educating neurotypical people as to that kind of thing, because my boss understands and gets it, but a previous boss, another job which I had to leave, it didn't get it. So he saw, even though I'd done all the stuff, he saw me doing nothing. He saw that I didn't appear to be working, and got angry with me because I was wasting time and money and stuff. It's like, it's bullshit.
If you have ADHD, how do you parent Owen?
It's a thing. So you've got big advantages as a parent, particularly with young kids, because you're going to be able to relate to them so much easier. Particularly when they're very young. Your brain works like a child's in some regards, because you see things and stuff like that. However, particularly when you've more than one kid, it can be very difficult to do that splitting of attention. When when one kid wants to do one thing, one kid wants to do another thing, and they both want your attention, that's really hard. as a parent with ADHD. A neurotypical person can shut one off for a moment and take care of this one and then show the other thing. I find that very, very difficult when Ella and Rory both want to do things. So I have to kind of discipline things and say, look, I'm going to play this thing with you right now, Rory, and then I'm going to be playing with Ella for half an hour, and that's how we're going to do it. And then I have to try and keep to that rigid boundary myself, even if the others are getting in there. Even the other one wants attention, so to speak, and keep saying, no, this is this person's time, this is this person's time. So you have to come up with your own coping techniques in that regard, you know.
And in saying that as well, because it's like you've got two children at different ages and also different genders. So how do you, that's a dynamic in itself.
It is, yeah, it is. Good question. I mean, I was never a very good older brother to my sister. I say this a lot when I was young, you know. And one of the reasons their mother and I decided to have them quite close together, and they're 2.5 years together, is because we hope they get on better that way. And they do to a reasonable extent than I did with them. But you know, kids' emotions will flow, particularly when they're tired. And recognizing they're tired is hard. And also, when your children are also neurodiverse, chances are bedtimes are going to be difficult. Yeah. You know, it can take an ADHD kid or an autistic kid a long time to get to sleep sometimes. And if you wear them out too much during the day, they're going to be, you know, exhausted, and then they're going to react more. One thing you have to look out for, particularly in that, is not just physical exhaustion, but sort of emotional and mental exhaustion as well. If there's certain interactions, you know, social interactions that neurotypical people would find easy, that, you know, autistic kid is going to find very tiring, that's going to exhaust them as much as, you know, running around the field for a long time. Whereas actually they may be able to run around the field for hours and hours and hours and not have any and feel absolutely fine, you know. But yeah, for me, it's been very much about kind of being aware of that, being aware of the differences. I mean, they're not typical in a way. I mean, Ella is the one who beats up Rory. I'll quite happily say, you know, he's much more sensitive than she is. He is very in control of his temper, certainly, whereas her temper flares very, very, very quickly and very easily. She's very like I was when I was a child. Actually, when I was young, I got into trouble a lot at school because if something upset me, I would just snap. I wouldn't think, I'd just snap. And that it can be very much an ADHD thing. It's not necessarily, but for me it was. Whereas Rory doesn't do that. He tends to I mean, actually, watching them play video games is a very good example. Actually, when Rory loses in a game, he'll laugh it off or not care, or if it was a tough one, like, you know, a full hour and no save and it's gone, you know, he'll be like, oh no. And be sad about it. Whereas Ella can get very angry with the game very quickly, and she's broken a few controllers in the past. You know, that's you know, and it could very well be they both have ADHD, or it could be that Rory is on a different spectrum, but they're reacting very differently.
Oh, and see, in that sense, okay, so when they're going through their little tiffs, how do you stay composed, or do you even stay composed and just try to sort it out? And
sometimes it can be really hard, you know. And I mean, the first thing we have to do as parents is remember we're going to mess it up. That's going to happen, and you have to give yourself the slack for when you do. But then, you know, approach it from a matter of trying to do your best. Okay. Trying not to get brought into it yourself in terms of high emotions. You want to try and be calm about it and say, right, you know, as soon as I see something coming, I'll always say, if there is a fight, there will be no screens for the rest of the day, or something like that, you know. And so I'm making it clear from that point, it's not if you do this or if you do this, it's if there is a fight. So it doesn't matter who the hell starts it. It doesn't matter whose fault it is, whatever. If a fight happens, this is happening to both of you. Work it out between yourselves, you know. So giving them that. Also trying to force yourself to be calm can kind of push it in a different way, as it were, but trying to accept how you feel and then let it go rather than try and push it down, as it were. And remember, the most important thing isn't about how you act so much as how you react, because what really will make a difference to your children is they are going to model themselves on you. That's what's going to happen. That's what that's what your son is going to think a man is. That's what your daughter's going to think a man is if you're a man, you know. Yeah. So if you are, you know, the kind, you know, to use the worst possible example, if you're an angry drunken man who throws things around and scares them and uses fists, your son's going to grow up to be an angry drunken man who runs around throwing his fists, and your daughter's going to grow up to marry one. You know, in a heterosexual sexual model, that is, obviously. But if you are, you know, if you identify that there are toxic masculine traits in you, but do what you can to, and therapy is one way of doing this, or other things to remove that, to go past that, to be a positive role model. Your son is going to grow up to be a positive person. Your daughter's going to grow up to marry a positive person, and so on. And that's and likewise for their mother as well. You know, in exactly the opposite way. If we're getting totally Freudian on this, it is. You know, it obviously it's a bit more complicated, but but it is. But even more than sort of what you do to break up the fight, the way that you react to it, the way they see you acting and reacting to all kinds of things in your life, that's what's going to make the big difference in the long term, I think. And so policing yourself is the wrong word, because that suggests that you're trying to fight it, you're trying to stop yourself being you, you're trying to sort of act against yourself. It's accepting yourself, being able to move past those back, find more positive ways to let those emotions out, you know, than the negative toxic ones, and then they will do the same. They will see the same, you know. Let your kids know if you go to therapy. Tell your kids you go to therapy. That's really good, because then they'll see therapy as a good thing. Yeah. And yes, we should. The world should see therapy as a good thing. That is an attitude the world should have. You know, if you act badly, apologize and mean it, and then don't do it again. Because if you apologize for something, but it's still a spiral, then all they learn is those apologies mean nothing. So you have got to be prepared to work on yourself, because at the end of the day, and this is even true for your children, you know, we can't change anyone but ourselves.
Yes, that's
and
right.
We can only lead by example. You know.
Owen, do you, like, how has parenting changed you as a man? Like, as Jesus, your own identity?
And this is, probably the most. The biggest cliche of being a parent is them saying, "Oh, it changes you. Oh, it changes you." Yeah, of course it changes you. It literally rewrites your DNA.
Yes.
That is literally a thing that is going to happen as soon as you're a parent. Because, to go down to a biological level, when you have your baby with you, you are absolutely off your tits on oxytocin. That is a chemical the brain produces that you have never produced in that kind of quantity before in your life. That's how you can do sleepless nights for weeks and still get up the next morning, because you're doing that. And that literally does rewrite your DNA. It's an epigenetic thing. So you are literally a different person afterwards. I can't even. This actually happened very shortly after Rory was born. I couldn't look back at the rest of my life beforehand and think of it in the same way as my life at the time now. It was like it was like a movie, as it were, and we were in the sequel now. We were in the third part or whatever it was. You know, there kind of was that separation, that mental separation, in the, you know, or it's like you know, when you go to sleep and whatever happened before you were asleep, that was yesterday, and now it's today. You know, there's that kind of separation in my brain from the person I was before and the person I was afterwards. I'm a lot tireder, but that's just a physical thing that all parents know. But I'm a lot slower with my emotions, I think, and that's a good thing. You know, I'm a lot more
calmer, would you say?
I don't know if calm is the right word, because I never really call myself calm, but I'm a lot better at taking things slower and slowing down before I react, before I act, and so on. The feelings are still there, but I'm a lot better at being Yeah, and a lot better at being more present, I think, as well, in that regard. And how much of that is just having kids and how much of that is just forcing myself, I'm not too sure. But, I mean, also just those first few years with the kid, you kind of have to slow down because you've got those big pauses where all you're doing is taking care of this child, you know, and you can't be doing anything else. I mean, it depends to an extent of the relationship, and, you know, how much are you the breadwinner and going out and doing all the work and the other person in there, or are you sharing the parenting responsibility with someone that, and that's, you know, that's going to make a difference in that regard. And no, nothing is better than the other in that regard. You know, it's all fine, much of a muchness. But yeah, that feeling of wanting to make sure the time you spend with your kid counts as well, and trying to make sure you frame that in a positive way so that it's not.
Oh, wait.
It's not. Yeah, please come for it.
See, in that sense, okay, so how do you, okay, let's say that you're putting in a sacrifice for your child, that you want to spend as much time as possible and just to be around them. How do you do that without losing yourself? Because a part of the process is you're going to lose your focus, you're going to lose, you know.
That is very important. You need, for me, one of the things was I wanted to, this is particularly true when you are separated and you have got a specific amount of time that is your time with the kids and this time that is mum's time with the kids. Yeah. You have to think about, you know, what is it you want your kids to get from this? Because they aren't necessarily going to remember the details. They're going to remember the feelings. And I knew what I wanted from the get-go was a place where they always feel safe and that always feel things are reasonably chill. And so I very early on stopped trying to be that kind of parent who always went out and did something crazy with his kids every time he had them. Wow, which is a very big temptation when you're a dad, particularly, you know. And establish, you know, Friday night is pizza night. We always go out and we have pizza. That's that thing, and those little rituals are things that they'll remember in that way too. But also fostering an environment where they're feeling comfortable to do their thing, and to let you do your thing, is actually a real. You know, you may not feel. They actually have a word for it in terms of childcare. Parallel play instead of you know, they're not playing the same thing, but they're both playing next to each other and stuff like that. That's actually a really positive environment to them on. You know, in terms of relationships in the past, the times I've always felt most in love and most happy is when I've been with a partner and we've been in the same room, we've been doing two different things, but we very much feel connected, you know. And so that is a very positive environment to foster for your kids, because they'll learn that is a good thing to be in, and to feel, and a situation where they feel comfortable with other people, but also feel comfortable being themselves, which, like you say, you don't lose yourself into it. You're not masking, you're not pretending to be someone else for someone else. Exactly.
Can I just stop you on that? So that's quite interesting that you said, because when we're told to spend time with our children, there's not an exact definition, but just being around, like playing next to each other, walking, talking, whatever it may be, those little simple things, they don't have to overcomplicate things, you know?
All kids want is attention, love, and being near them, really. Being with them, you know. They want to know you're there. They want to feel you're there, you know. They don't want to feel too controlled, but they want to know they're safe, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Now that doesn't mean that, you know, if that when you're going off to say, oh, I don't want to, that you give in. No, you know, you're going to school. That's happening. Or you know, no, we've got this. We're going to the beach today. That's a plan we made. We're going to do that. Very important to always say to your kids, this is what we're going to do, not do you want to go to the beach today, because you're going to get a no. If it's do you want, if it's all or if you're going to ask them, do you want, pick your freaking time, because when the time when they're watching television or focused on something that is just going to be draining them, they're not going to want to do anything but focus on the thing that's got their attention right now, you know.
See on that point right there. Okay, so what's your approach like when you've asked your child to not do something or do something, and they just said, no, I'm not going to do it? How do you cope in them kind of situations? What do you do?
And luckily that doesn't happen that much. Ella is the kind who will just sort of stop and say, no, I'm not going to. And I'll just say, you know, it'll be, okay, fine. Then, I mean, you can either go to bed now,
Yeah, yeah.
or we're not going to have screens for the next next 24 hours, or something like that. And if you always say yes if you possibly can, but when you say no, mean it. Is very important.
Right. Okay.
They need to know that threat is real. But she'll usually, and also, I mean, knowing that, when a kid's saying no like that, no, I don't want it, no, that's not, that's them being emotional in that moment. That's not going to last. The way they're feeling right now is going to be gone within 20 minutes of getting into bed or whatever it is. You're heading there too, and some kids, I mean, Rory is a lot more, I wouldn't say obedient, but he's a lot more chill about those sort of things than Ella is, to an extent. But yeah, she's a lot more willful. She's an example I often give, is when she was 1 year old. There's a park in London Zoo that has this whole sort of thing where you have to walk across a rope from one thing to another. And she couldn't do that, but there's a net underneath. And she said, when's that net? And she scrambled across it and then scrambled up the wall on the other side. And I remember this taking her in my mind, it was like 20 minutes she was doing it for. It was probably in about 5 or whatever. But it took her ages to do it. But she kept doing it until she got it, and then went, I did it! Very loud. and then immediately went down the slide, came back and started doing it all over again. And that's the kind of girl she is. And it's really encouraging in some ways. In other ways, it means that she's not going to bed when you ask her to go to bed. She's got that willful power. And as a parent, it's recognizing that that's a positive thing, and not trying to control her and stop her being like that, because you don't want to discourage that. You just want to help her to understand where it's good and where it's not helpful, exactly, and channel it and help her to channel it as well. Because if you get upset with your child for acting the way that they are, they will dislike things about themselves, and you don't ever want your child to dislike themselves in any way. Really.
No, definitely.
You want them to grow, you want them to be a better person, but you don't want them to dislike themselves. That's a very different thing.
Owen, do you believe in timeout? Does that even exist in your family?
So it does, yeah.
Really?
Their mother uses timeouts a lot more than I do. I, generally speaking, I usually don't have to to the same extent.
What's the difference?
If something bad happens, there will be a consequence, and I will usually separate them. But often Ella will want to separate herself anyway at that point, at this minute. But the point of a timeout is that it's not. I get the psychology in it, in that it's not. It is a consequence, and that you're not doing that anymore. You're having a timeout, but it's also okay. We need to take a break from this now, and we need to come down. Exactly, it goes right back to what we were talking about at the beginning with chatting with someone there. The emotions are high. We need to step away until the emotions have gone down, and then we can carry on with our lives. And so that's actually modelling that very healthy behaviour for your kids, and there's nothing wrong with explaining that to them. That's what it's about.
Having a conversation with it.
Again, that comes back to that whole thing of there not being bad emotions. That it's not making sure Ella understands it's not bad to be willful. It's not bad to be stubborn and want to do the thing they want to do. That can be a good thing when done right. It's just learning how to use that emotion rather than just to get like that. And of course, that's when you're 6, you're 6. There's a limit to how much you're going to be able to do. But if we model it now, then when they're 16, 18, 20, that's when the difference is going to be made.
And that's quite an interesting point that you made, because do you know what? When we try to reprimand behavior, it's always seen as something negative rather than how do you channel it? Because we've been told, no, that's wrong. You shouldn't do that. Don't do that again. But rather than, like we said, channel it and educate them. Exactly. That's quite an interesting concept.
And schools, to a large extent, particularly in the UK, are starting to understand this now, particularly at an earlier level. Anyway, it would seem, they are the school my kids go to is very good for that, and very saying that this is about, let's, we're all friends here. No one's being punished, but there will be using the word consequence instead of punishment and so on. You're not being punished for being you, so that you don't dislike being you,
Yeah.
and I think that's something in our generation a lot that's happened, is that a lot of us have grown up not liking the people we are because
Yeah.
we've been told that. I mean, we've had the words good and bad used
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah.
I do my best to avoid saying good boy or good girl, or you've been very good today
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
my kids, because that's suggesting that obedience or or not acting in some way is somehow morally better. So I try and say, no, you're being really helpful right now, because they are. They're helping me a lot.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
a much better word to use than good in
So
that regard.
you're describing the action.
If they're feeling sad
Yeah.
and they're feeling upset about themselves, I will happily reassure them and say, you are a good boy, or you're a good girl, you're a good person. That's a very different thing. But calling them good or calling them bad for not being polite or not behaving or not obeying, all that kind of stuff, has potentials for kind of negative connotations, particularly as someone who's good to question things, and Ella is going to be that kind of person. Her whole life she's going to question things, and great, she'll probably start a revolution. We need one, probably, in the
Can I
long
ask you
run.
something? See, not every father was taught how to be a father, or every dad taught how to be a father, right? So how did you educate yourself before it got too late? Before, I've done too much damage towards my kids. Now there's a
Yeah,
lot of
I
trauma.
mean.
Because not everyone comes prepared with all this type
No, I
of
mean, none of us come prepared.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's still a work in progress.
yeah,
Absolutely, 100%. It's a work in progress. I remembered my own childhood and what didn't work for me as a kid.
right, okay,
And this is not just from my parents, from teachers, from all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that I would get emotional, and I now know that this is part of my ADHD.
yeah, yeah.
And I'd be told to stop that. Don't act like that. Don't cry. Don't stop. No. Be quiet. Be quiet. And that just made it worse for me.
Okay, okay. So
And so I know
you're filling the
that.
gap.
I knew, well, that doesn't work. What does work? We're trying to look for alternatives. So, and again, it's about knowing yourself. It's about learning yourself. It's about working on yourself and seeing. If you see faults in your children, or what you see as a fault in your children, look at yourself, because you're who they've got it from.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
the truth
yeah.
of it.
It
That's where they've
always
learned
does.
it, and the only person we can ever change is ourselves. And if your children see you notice something that needs working on and work on it in yourself, what more positive role model can you ever give a child than that?
Yeah.
You can't. That is like the ultimate good example you'll ever give to your child, in a way. And they will model it. It's just. But bear in mind, again, as I said earlier, you're a human. You're tired most of the time. You're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay. Let that off yourself, and don't just apologize to the kid. Apologize to yourself as well. Let them see that too. That's very much kind of is for me. But no, I mean, I didn't. And in some ways, I learned the hard way. I made a lot of mistakes early on, and I had to escape the situation that I was in order to be a more positive person in that way, I guess.
Owen, I want to ask you, what was your own upbringing like between you and your father? What was that like, Owen?
I mean, odd in some ways very good. My parents were always very, very supportive in many ways. I can't say this enough. I'm extremely privileged. I'm a white middle class man. Couldn't have been, in terms of many things, I won the lottery right there. But my dad is was, and to an extent still is, kind of a workaholic. Probably ADHD on his behalf as well, but he's never got diagnosed. I mean, it wasn't understood when I was a kid. Sure as hell wasn't understood back then. And so he could lose his temper when things got quite emotional as well. And he'd get quite badly things on. And I very much learnt that from him.
Right.
And this is kind of how I know about the whole modelling thing. Is that's one of the reasons I act like that, is because that's how I saw that. And often now, spending time with my father and seeing that, particularly when I had Rory very young, was one way I could realize, that I've got to remind myself not to look out for those things in me and work on that before that was a problem. But then, they were they were very cool about me becoming a street performer, for example. I spent 16 years entertaining people on the street for a living, and they had no problems with that whatsoever. Whereas a lot of parents would not be cool with that.
Yeah.
So they gave me a lot of very good examples to go off, and I think it's a good thing, and not a bad thing to your parents to not just recognize what was good about what they did. Where did they go wrong? Try and keep the good and work on the bad, whilst recognizing that you are probably going to turn into your parents in many ways, but work on what are those things that I do not want to happen,
That's a really interesting approach, because a lot of boys that turn into fathers, or still are boys, young men, they have a lot of resentment towards the way that they've been growing up, and they carry that into their own relationship. So when they become fathers, there's so much trauma that's not healed yet.
Absolutely,
and it gets passed down, sadly. So that's quite fortunate that you were able to identify that and work with it.
Definitely, and I mean, I think that's a bit of advice to any sort of men who are becoming fathers. Talk to your dad. Try and fix that stuff before the gun's in, or at least do what you can. Communicate, talking is good, and if it can't be done in talk, write a letter. Letters are great as well. Whatever needs to be done. Exactly. I mean, communication and understanding that we're not good at communicating. No one is. We're always going to miscommunicate. We're always going to make mistakes, and we get better at it. But it's the same thing with any kind of relationship, whether it's a paternal one, whether it's a romantic one, whether it's a business relationship. If you don't talk to each other and tell people, these is what's working, this is the things that I'm having trouble with, this is so on, that thing's never getting anywhere, and know when you need to put distance, to it. I mean, and also, you need to. I'm not saying that everyone should try and make if your parent was really, really toxic, and you've put distance between them deliberately, do what you need to do. Don't open up bridges that you deliberately burnt for your own safety, that kind of stuff. But there are other ways. In that case, there's other ways, therapy and other relationships that you can use to move past that. And I think as men as well, throughout our growing up period, our father isn't the only dad we have in many ways. We have lots of other father figures. We have lots of other male role models that we'll look up to and so on. I mean, my drama teacher at school was a massive influence on me, throughout my life, because theatre became such a huge part of my life in that regard. There are several street performers who I'll refer to as mentors, who taught me not just about how to be street performers, but how to be men, how to be a person, etc., and understand myself.
That's actually quite a good point, because what do you think we're missing in today's society as men, as fathers, as what do you think that we need? Is it
women, honestly, and not in the way that Andrew Tate will say we do. I mean, we need to listen to women. We need to talk to women. We need to understand women. We need and I think in some ways the divide between men and women has gotten a lot better, but in some ways it's gotten a lot worse. And I think that's particularly true with younger men as well, who feel that there is no access to. I mean, we're pushed sex and we're pushed relationships in such a toxic way by the media all the time, and we're taught that so much of our worth depends on that. Like, no, sod off, don't be ridiculous. I mean, I mean, if you're religious, Jesus died a virgin, Even if you're not religious, that man still is one of the most influential men in history.
Absolutely.
As far as we're aware, as far as history says, died a virgin. His sexual conquests were not part of who he was as a man. I don't know about the prophet actually, about Muhammad, what the relationship is. That shows how white and privileged I am in that regard, that I haven't bothered to look up what that is. But in terms of so many other things as well, it's like this whole thing that women aren't going off and they only date assholes. They don't go to nice guys like me. If you're angry about that, you're not a very nice guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that right now. You're not actually very nice if that makes you angry. What we are, and as soon as we listen to women beyond just our mothers,
Okay.
and I'll be prepared to talk to women just as women, and be friends with women, we can learn so much, because a lot of our masculinity. And this is the stuff that isn't coming from, is technically maybe coming from our fathers, but it's not necessarily the sort of influence of it. But the influence of society on men can be very, very toxic, and very much kind of the only emotion you're allowed to experience is anger. And the only male you have to be is this kind of like that. And actually, as I found out in my old age, the female gaze is nothing like what we think it is. We think that what women want is freaking. My generation thinks it's Arnie and whatever. I don't know who the modern one is, but like that. No. Women like dad bods. Women like some squish. They like a nice belly to squish on. Women like hands. Women are mad into hands. This is something I never knew before. A man is sexiest when he's wearing a suit or wearing grey sweatpants. Those are the things apparently. This blew my mind when I heard it. And another thing, the male gaze is not what we're told it is either. And often men will go out or will pursue women that they're not actually that attracted to, because that's what we think we're meant to be attracted to. And we haven't actually taken the time to think, actually, I'm into girls with curves. I'm into girls who are really tall. I like tall girls. I don't want a short, frail thing. I like muscular girls, and that's okay, because we're all into different stuff, and that's good. And yet, take time to understand that. Take time to, I'm absolutely not saying in this, don't have sexual feelings. I actually do, but actually understand your sexuality. Take time to learn, where is your sexuality? What is it about? And learn that, women have just as much of a sexual appetite as you. What women need is to feel safe from their man, that man is not going to abuse them. He is not going to manipulate them into having sex. He is not going, and he's sure as hell not going to be, violent or anything about it. And when you communicate in that regard with everyone, men, women, gay people, straight people, transgender people, get to know as many people as you possibly can, because you'll learn so much from everybody. And be open about that. Be prepared to listen to people. There's far too much, particularly in social media these days, of just the moment you hear someone who has a different opinion to you, it's like, no, fuck you, I'm not talking to you, blocked. No, even if that person's views seem despicable to you, try and understand what has made them like that. To a large extent, what's made them like that these days is arguing with people on social media. There is no Facebook, no Trump. It is as simple as that. That would never have happened. There's no way in hell America would have gone the way it has gone if it hadn't been for social media. I absolutely believe that, now, and as a result, actually, young people are now moving off sort of those traditional social media models into things like Discord, which are a lot more controlled. But there's still the way those algorithms work that we get addicted to, and so on. And listen to people, talk to people, and if they're talking about, if the subject, their opinion on one subject is abhorrent to you, talk about something else.
You can always
because the chances are you actually probably agree on loads of other things, just not that thing, like that,
So, Owen, there sounds like that. I guess going forward for us is to improve is just to listen more, to be open to understanding.
Absolutely. That book. How to Win Friends and Influence People, which Carnegie, which everyone sort of recommends on. And I hate the title of that book, because it sounds like you're talking to a psychopath. Things like this is how you win friends and influence people. Whereas the book should really be how not to be a twat. That's really the name of the book. How not to be, because it's a lovely book. It's a really lovely book, and it's about how to be a nice person. And a large amount of it is listen to people. Except you can't win an argument. Arguments never get won. But you can talk to people and listen to people, and if you're going to talk to someone about an object, go into it with an open mind. Be prepared to learn stuff, and they'll be prepared, and as a result, they'll learn stuff from you, and we'll all get better as a result, slowly. You
That's
know,
the
those
key
little
right there,
ripples
isn't
will move out.
it?
Yeah,
You actually summed up this whole communication thing. You just
exactly. Yeah.
listen, embrace, understand
And that,
where they're
and
coming
as I
from.
said, for parents, that's a huge thing. Be prepared to learn from your kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Because your kids will teach you stuff about yourself if you
Oh
listen
yeah,
that
yeah,
you'll
yeah,
never recognize.
yeah, yeah,
Because kids will cut right through the bullshit.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
They'll pull you on. Yeah,
one thing I talk about a lot is I took Ella when she was like 2, I think, to
yeah.
Tate Modern, the art gallery. And you know, we go into a modern art gallery like that, and we're looking at, you know, what is this thing? You know, because it's random. What are the artists trying to say with this? And Ella just goes, "It's a giraffe. That's Granny. That's marbles." I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I mean, just straight through. They get it. They get a picture, and that's what it is. And that's yeah. The absolute clarity that a child can have in that regard is a very powerful thing to be confronted with as an adult, I think, and as a parent. And you can learn an awful lot just by listening to what your child says. And if, you know, instead of when they say something, and you may know that, you know, the facts of a situation are different, think about, okay, yes, they've got a simplistic view, but what does that simplistic view of things tell us? You know, why is that the simplistic view that they've picked up? You know, is it just what they've been taught at school, or is it just what they've got from those things? Because that makes that makes a lot of difference
do
too.
you think that we're just too busy focusing on winning points or arguing rather than trying to understand?
Oh, absolutely. No one wants the world to be better anymore. They just want to win.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, that was always the case. Let's be honest. Now that hasn't changed much. Whenever someone's in an argument, that's always going to be a thing. You as soon as you get into an argument, you no longer really care who's right or wrong. You just want to win. That's an emotional thing, and that goes back to understanding where those emotions are flared and so on. That's one of the things social media is really terrible about, because you can be having arguments with strangers that would have taken months to get to the kind of aggression that it would have if you'd been face to face in the old days, or writing letters to each other in the old days. But now happens in seconds, you know. And because you're kind of hiding behind a keyboard, and there's no consequences, or on your phone screen or whatever. You get that, and you get that flare of being, and it's dopamine again. Actually, is what it is. Is that same chemical in the brain that makes it. And you're not, you know. The logical, that whole thing that's about, you know, reacting to things, and then you explain to yourself why you're doing it. You're telling yourself you're trying to teach something, or you're trying to make a point or something. No, it's just the chemicals trying to win. It's just you reacting to stimuli. You're not making it, and no one has ever had their views changed by an argument on social media, ever. You know, the time people's views are changed are when they meet people, they talk to people, they talk to people about something that's a completely different subject, find out that person's really nice and actually a normal person, and get to know. The way we learn is when and our views get changed by people that we like, and by people we're friends with, and that we begin to understand people's point of view. It's understanding, and then we change, and then our views evolve as opposed to being changed. If that makes sense, that's the big difference. Is that it's an evolution, because you're taking little bits of information you're getting from here and here and here, and it's better. Whereas.
Owen, how do you get to that intention where you're intentionally going out there to actually open your mind? How do you even acknowledge, oh, you know what, I'm going wrong here. Maybe I need to fix up. I need to just really educate myself, because sometimes you can just get stuck in a rut, the way that you're seeing things, and just be totally mindless.
So again, I mean, you know, they talk about mindfulness a lot these days, which is just being aware, being present, being aware of, this is how I feel, why do I feel like this, etc. I again think it can be as simple as writing down those feelings, or writing down, this is what I'm lacking in my life right now. This is what I'm feeling is wrong with my life right now. Why am I feeling like this? Or just even, you know, you get up in the morning, you write down what your thoughts are when you woke up that morning, and then take a few moments, walk away, and come back, and then look at them again and think, okay, is that actually a good thing that I'm thinking of there? Why am I thinking like that? Where's the faults? You know, Just like that Michael Jackson song about the man in the mirror, you know.
Oh yeah.
Take a look at yourself and make the change. It's one of those sort of key truths that has sort of lasted, and that goes back to like the Epic of Gilgamesh and all that kind of stuff, you know. The things that universal that have lasted that long don't last that long for no reason, you know. That's how all the great heroes in every story.
Yeah.
They succeed. They never succeed by just being the thing they were at the beginning and getting all the way through, except in maybe a very few kind of, you know, rather silly action movies. The hero always wins because they identify their flaw and they change that thing about themselves, or they overcome that flaw in themselves. That's, you know, I mean, 90% of stories will always be boiled down to that. It is the hero has a flaw, they overcome it, or they change it, you know, or they fall susceptible to it, which is a tragedy. If the flaw is the thing that undermines and destroys them, that's and you know, I mean, people pretend, just going back to sort of like Greek tragedies like Oedipus, whatever. That was the thing, you know. He was very prideful. That came to destroy him. Breaking Bad is a great example of a modern tragedy in that regard. You know, Walter White is a proud person. That's his flaw. He doesn't overcome it. It destroys him. That is the story. That's why we love watching it. It's the story of his spiral. So it makes him a great man in some way. It makes him more powerful. It is, but at the end, it leads to his destruction and eventual death. I don't think that's much of a spoiler anymore. Breaking Bad's been out for a decade. Get over it, you know. But in a sort of traditional hero's journey where the hero succeeds in the end, he succeeds because he overcomes his flaw, and that's something that every story has been trying to teach us forever. Actually getting into a place to do it, the first thing you have to do is recognize the things there in the first place, and that's hard.
Right.
But I would always say, it's much easier to see flaws in other people.
Yes.
Chances are, if you see a flaw in someone else, that flaw is there in you somewhere.
Okay.
It may not be as pronounced as it is in them. It may be way more pronounced and you just overlook it.
Yeah.
But if you see something in someone else, rather than try and, you know, do something about it in them, look at yourself. Think about yourself. Okay, fine. I'm saying that about them. Exactly. Yeah. Think of it as a mirror. The man in the mirror again. And think, what is it about me that's like that? What can I do about myself so I'm not like that?
Yeah.
That's a really good way to become more open and honest with yourself in that regard and work on it.
Amazing.
As it were.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Owen, okay, so, right. I would like to ask you, if there was one piece of advice that you can give the viewers, what would that be in terms of becoming a better man, becoming a better father? What would your 1 cent be, Owen? What would that look like?
Listen.
Listen, that's
and talk. Simple as that. Listen, talk.
Listen more, talk less.
Talk about yourself less, but talk to everyone.
Okay.
Talk to everyone, but more importantly, listen to everyone.
Okay.
Listen, and learn, and be prepared to learn. No matter who that person is, no matter how different that person's world is to you, because that's how you learn stuff. My first job in the civil service, when I stopped being a street performer, because in the street performer, obviously, I met people all over the world, all kinds of people all over the world. From princes to homeless people. But my first job in the civil service was in a thing called the Office for National Statistics, which is basically the people that do the census. The census every 10 years. They also do all these other studies throughout it, and my job was driving around and interviewing random people who have been randomly selected about their just so that with not just the government but the civil service, newspaper, all kinds of things had a picture of what is Britain made up of today. But in doing those interviews and finding out the simple facts, you'd hear their stories and. People from all kinds of backgrounds, people who I would never have wanted to speak to in a million years in another situation, because I found, them so abhorrent because of, them being sort of old white racists and stuff like that. But, I had to sit down and talk to them. But when I got past that bit, hearing their life story and stuff like that, you know, fascinating stuff. And even from people you don't like, you can still learn a lot.
Agreed.
Not necessarily, you can even if it's just learning, that's the person I don't want to fucking be.
Yeah.
But if you go, but yeah, learn and always be prepared to learn from them, learn from yourself, and see yourself in other people. I think is what I'd say.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. Owen, I thank you.
And love yourself as well, in a way. You know, it's not arrogant to love yourself, and it's particularly for men. Love is a word we have a lot of trouble with sometimes because of all that toxic masculine stuff is on. And certainly self-love. You know, the only times we think of men who love themselves, we see these fucking arrogant cunts and we don't want to be anything like. But no, just appreciate loving yourself in the way you'd love your own child. You know, like, you know, you're flawed. You make mistakes, but I love you. I love you unconditionally. You know,
that actually sounds like a sense of correct me if I'm wrong. Like to have some level of self-esteem within you.
That's what it is, and that's what it is. And that's been a real struggle throughout my whole life, I can tell you. You know, I was bullied a lot at school, I went through a lot of bad stuff. It's taken me a long time to get to the point where I'm okay and comfortable with myself, you know. But yeah, if you can't do that easily, therapy will help with that too. You know, that is the thing. But yeah.